The dusty stagecoach creaks to a halt as eager bachelors scan the arriving mail-order brides. But no one wanted the too-old black bride, until a small boy pointed at her and declared, "That's Mama." The weathered woman stands apart while younger, fairer brides are claimed like prize cattle. Townsfolk whisper cruel judgments, certain she'll return east on tomorrow's stage. Another spinster's dream crushed by frontier reality. But the grieving widower watches his motherless sons, one bold, one silent, as they gravitate toward this dismissed stranger with unexpected certainty. She carries herself with quiet dignity that hints at hidden strengths, while he guards secrets about land that could change everything. Their fates intertwine around two traumatized boys who desperately need stability. But powerful forces from back east threaten to tear apart any family they might build. Will the woman everyone underestimated become the salvation this broken household needs? Or will society's prejudices destroy their last chance at belonging? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The morning sun beat down mercilessly on Sundown Prairie's dusty main street as the weekly stagecoach rumbled to a halt. A cloud of red dirt settled around the wooden wheels, while eager bachelors gathered in the town square, their boots shuffling against the packed earth. Today brought the mail-order brides. Josephine Washington stepped down from the coach, her worn brown dress clean but patched. At 35, she carried herself with quiet dignity, despite the weight of desperate circumstances. Her small leather satchel contained everything she owned in this world. 3 books wrapped in oilcloth, a silver thimble from her seamstress days, the advertisement that promised new beginnings in the territories. The other women from the coach clustered together like nervous birds. Mary, barely 18 with golden curls. Sarah, 22 with rosy cheeks and a shy smile. Catherine, perhaps 25, already considered practically an old maid back in Missouri. They smoothed their skirts and adjusted their bonnets, while potential suitors approached with measured steps. Josephine stood apart. She had learned long ago not to expect the same treatment as white women. The Kansas City breeze. The station master avoided her gaze when she asked about lodging for the night. The general store owner stepped outside to flip his sign to closed, though the sun hadn't reached noon. From the shade of the mercantile porch, Sam McCready watched the cruel display with growing discomfort. He hadn't come to choose a bride. The whole notion seemed foolish after Maria. But his sons had begged to see the excitement, and he rarely denied them simple pleasures these days. Daniel pressed against his father's side, 8 years old with his mother's dark eyes and his father's stubborn chin. Little Ben clung to his brother's hand, 5 years of selective silence having made him cautious of crowds. The boy had barely spoken since Maria's death, communicating mainly through nods and the occasional whispered word to Daniel. Sam studied the dismissed woman across the square. Something in her bearing reminded him of his late wife's quiet strength. Maria had possessed that same spine-straight posture when facing down rattlesnakes or difficult neighbors. This stranger faced public humiliation with equal composure. The woman opened her satchel and withdrew a small book. She read while standing in the blazing sun, apparently unbothered by the stares and whispers. The ability to read marked her as unusual. Most women on the frontier managed little beyond their names and simple figures. A group of local wives gathered near the church steps, their voices carrying across the square. Their leader, Mrs. Henderson, spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear about the impropriety of certain people having ideas above their station. About how some folks needed to learn their proper place in decent society. Sam felt his jaw tighten. He had known similar treatment after Maria's death, when well-meaning neighbors suggested he send the boys to live with relatives back east. People always seemed ready to tell others what they couldn't or shouldn't do. The dismissed woman closed her book and looked around the square with clear assessment. She wasn't seeking pity or growing tearful like most would. Instead, she seemed to be calculating options with the methodical approach of someone accustomed to solving problems independently. Daniel tugged on his father's shirt sleeve. "Pa, why is everyone being mean to that lady?" The question cut through Sam's brooding thoughts. His son possessed and acknowledged her presence. The matched couples emerged from the preacher's house, newly wed and beaming. Their happiness seemed to mock the solitary figure still waiting in the square. Sam found himself considering the woman's situation with growing concern. She clearly had no money for return passage, or she would have bought her ticket already. The next eastbound stage wouldn't arrive for 3 days. No respectable establishment would house an unescorted woman of color, leaving her with dangerous options or sleeping rough. His ranch sat 10 miles outside town, struggling under the weight of too much work and too little help. The boys needed guidance he couldn't provide. Meals consisted of whatever he could manage after 14-hour days fighting drought and debt. The house that had once rung with Maria's laughter now echoed with masculine silences and childhood sorrows. But taking in a stranger seemed impossible. What would people say? How would it affect the boys? His own reputation balanced on the edge of respectability, since Maria's death had left him scrambling to maintain appearances while managing everything alone. The dismissed woman tucked her book away and squared her shoulders. She began walking toward the stagecoach office with purposeful strides, apparently ready to confront whatever came next. Her courage in the face of certain disappointment stirred something in Sam's chest that had been dormant since Maria's funeral. Daniel watched her approach with obvious fascination, while Ben pressed closer to his brother's side. Whatever happened next would change everything for all of them, though none could yet imagine how completely their lives were about to transform. Josephine reached the stagecoach office as the clerk emerged with departure schedules. His thin face showed no sympathy when she inquired about eastbound passage. The price might as well have been a king's ransom. Her remaining coins wouldn't cover half the fare. Behind her, the square had begun to empty as the excitement faded. The newly married couples dispersed to begin their lives, while townspeople returned to afternoon routines. Only a few stragglers remained to witness her mounting predicament. Sam McCready found himself moving before conscious thought formed. His boots carried him across the dusty square, while his sons flanked him like small sentries. Daniel's eyes never left the woman's face. Ben maintained his characteristic silence but stayed on him into trouble countless times before. Sam called his name sharply, but Daniel ignored the command. The woman looked down as Daniel stopped directly in front of her. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that transcended age and circumstance. The boy studied her face with the intensity he usually reserved for interesting insects or cloud formations. Ben followed his brother with hesitant steps, drawn by an invisible force stronger than his usual shyness. The younger boy rarely approached strangers, but he moved toward the woman as if pulled by natural magnetism. Sam hurried to retrieve his wayward sons before they caused embarrassment, but he stopped short when he saw their expressions. Both boys wore looks of absolute certainty that he hadn't seen since before Maria's death. Daniel's face glowed with discovery, while Ben actually smiled for the first time in months. The woman knelt gracefully to bring herself to their eye level. Her movement was fluid and practiced, suggesting long experience with children. She spoke softly to Daniel, her voice carrying the musical cadence of someone who had learned proper speech through careful study rather than birthright. Daniel nodded vigorously at whatever she said, then turned to face the gathered crowd. His young voice cut through the afternoon air with startling clarity and conviction. "That's Mama." The words fell like stones into still water, creating ripples that spread across the entire square. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Mrs. Henderson's mouth opened in visible shock, while her companions exchanged scandalized glances. Sam felt the ground shift beneath his feet. His son's declaration carried the weight of absolute truth, delivered with the innocence that made children's observations so devastating to adult pretenses. Daniel showed no awareness of the social earthquake he had just triggered. Ben stepped forward and placed his small hand in the woman's larger one. The gesture spoke volumes from a boy who rarely touched anyone outside his immediate family. His whispered voice reached only those closest to him. Mama Joe. The nickname emerged from somewhere deep in Ben's protected heart. Sam stared at his youngest son, who hadn't spoken above a whisper in public for over a year. Now Ben gazed at this stranger with something implications and consequences. His sons had made their choice with the clarity that adults had trained themselves to ignore. Their immediate attachment to this woman defied explanation, but couldn't be dismissed. Josephine stood as Sam drew near, meeting his gaze directly. Her eyes held intelligence and strength that commanded respect despite her circumstances. She spoke to him with quiet authority about his son's obvious needs and her own qualifications to address them. Her words revealed extensive knowledge of child development and household management. More surprisingly, she demonstrated literacy by reading the town charter posted outside the stagecoach office, correcting a commonly misunderstood regulation about property boundaries. Her education clearly exceeded that of most frontier women. The revelation sparked new whispers among the remaining crowd. An educated woman of any background was unusual in Sundown Prairie. An educated woman of color was practically unprecedented. Several townsmen moved closer to listen as she explained legal concepts with casual expertise. Sam found himself drawn into unexpected conversation about land rights and territorial law. Josephine's knowledge impressed him, while her manner with his sons awakened protective instincts he thought had died with Maria. The boys remained pressed against her sides, as if they had found their true north after months of wandering. Daniel announced his hunger with typical 8-year-old directness. Ben nodded agreement, while maintaining his grip on Josephine's hand. The simple domestic moment highlighted the afternoon's surreal developments, while creating immediate practical concerns. Mrs. Henderson's voice rose above the general murmur, demanding to know what decent people were supposed to think about such carrying on. Her words carried the sharp edge of social enforcement that kept frontier communities bound to rigid expectations. Sam looked at his sons' faces, then at the woman who had somehow awakened hope in their young hearts. The decision crystallized with sudden clarity. His boys needed what this stranger offered, regardless of social consequences or personal complications. He extended the invitation for her to accompany them to the ranch as temporary housekeeper. 1 month to see how arrangements worked for everyone involved. His offer wasn't charity, but practical necessity disguised as kindness. Josephine accepted with grace that think of while Ben sat unusually alert beside Josephine. The boys' continued engagement amazed Sam, who hadn't seen such sustained interest from his youngest son in months. Josephine observed the landscape with keen attention that went beyond casual curiosity. Her eyes tracked fence lines and water sources with the systematic approach of someone who understood land value. She noted the rich soil composition and natural windbreaks that suggested the property held more potential than its current appearance indicated. The ranch buildings came into view as they crested a small hill. The main house needed paint and repairs, but its solid construction spoke of better times. Outbuildings stood in various states of neglect, while overgrown gardens hinted at Maria's former care. Everything showed the signs of a man stretched too thin by circumstances beyond his control. Sam felt embarrassment creep up his neck as he saw his home through strangers' eyes. The broken porch steps he'd meant to fix last spring. The loose shutters that banged in prairie winds. The general air of barely managed survival that had settled over everything since Maria's death. But Josephine's expression showed assessment rather than judgment. She studied the property with the eye of someone who saw possibilities instead of problems. Her questions about water sources and soil quality revealed knowledge that surprised Sam with its depth and specificity. Inside the house, the full extent of bachelor housekeeping became apparent. Dishes piled in the kitchen sink, while laundry overflowed from baskets in the main room. The boys' sleeping area showed the chaos of children managing themselves without adequate supervision. Everything was clean enough, but lacked the organizing touch that transformed houses into homes. Josephine moved through the rooms with purposeful efficiency. She opened windows to let in fresh air while mentally cataloging what needed immediate attention versus long-term improvement. Her movements showed familiarity with domestic management on a scale larger than simple housekeeping. Daniel proudly showed her his collection of interesting rocks, while Ben shyly displayed a wooden horse his father had carved. Both boys seemed determined to share their most treasured possessions with this woman who had somehow earned their complete trust within hours of meeting. The kitchen drew Josephine's particular attention. She examined the stove and assessed the pantry contents with growing understanding of the family's dietary limitations. Sam's cooking clearly focused on filling stomach, ranch's true scope and value. Original land grants showed boundaries extending far beyond what Sam believed he owned. Water rights certificates granted access to the stream that ran through neighboring properties. Most significantly, mineral rights documentation suggested potential wealth that could transform the family's circumstances completely. Josephine's education at the hands of her former master's daughter had included extensive study of property law and land management. The young woman had been determined to understand every aspect of plantation operations, sharing her learning with the quick-minded seamstress who had become her closest confidant. Those lessons now proved invaluable as Josephine deciphered the legal documents with growing excitement. The ranch wasn't the marginal operation Sam believed he had inherited. Instead, it represented significant wealth that had been hidden by the previous owner's son before he died in the war. The water rights alone were worth thousands of dollars to neighboring ranchers who struggled with drought conditions. The mineral rights could prove even more valuable as railroad development brought new opportunities for resource extraction. Sam had been barely surviving while sitting on a potential fortune, but revealing this information required careful consideration. Josephine understood that knowledge could be as dangerous as it was valuable. The wrong people learning about the ranch's true worth could create problems that might destroy the fragile family she was beginning to care about deeply. Instead, she focused on immediate improvements that would demonstrate her value to the household while she considered how to handle the larger discovery. She organized the kitchen and prepared the first proper meal the family had enjoyed in months. The boys' enthusiastic response to her cooking confirmed Sam's wise decision to bring her home. As evening approached, Josephine established bedtime routines that the boys accepted with surprising cooperation. She read to them from one of her carefully preserved books, her clear voice bringing stories to life in the lamplight. Ben spoke more during that single evening than he had in weeks, drawn out by her patient attention and genuine interest in his thoughts. Sam watched these domestic miracles unfold with growing wonder. His house was transforming before his eyes as order replaced chaos and warmth displaced the cold efficiency of pure survival. More importantly, his sons were responding to feminine guidance they had desperately needed, but he couldn't provide. Leda complex households. She had worked for families of means who demanded efficiency and discretion. Her skills encompassed everything from basic medical care to financial planning, but she said nothing about the documents that could change their lives forever. That revelation would come when she was certain of Sam's character and the family's commitment to including her in their future. For now, it was enough to be needed and welcomed in ways she had never dared hope possible. The stars emerged in the clear prairie sky as two adults contemplated the unexpected turn their lives had taken. Neither fully understood how completely their fates had become intertwined, but both felt the stirring of possibilities that extended far beyond simple domestic arrangements. 3 weeks transformed the McCready Ranch into something Sam barely recognized. Josephine's influence touched every corner of their lives with quiet efficiency that seemed effortless, but produced remarkable results. The house gleamed with proper care, while meals appeared on schedule with variety that amazed the boys. Daniel's reading improved dramatically under Josephine's patient instruction. She used the hidden legal documents as teaching materials, helping him sound out complex words while secretly assessing their full implications. Ben spoke in complete sentences now, his selective mutism melting away under her consistent encouragement and genuine interest in his thoughts. Sam found himself looking forward to evenings on the porch where conversations ranged from practical ranch matters to deeper questions about life and purpose. Josephine's perspectives challenged his assumptions, while her presence brought peace he hadn't known since Maria's death. The community's initial shock gradually gave way to grudging acceptance. Mrs. Henderson still disapproved vocally, but other families began acknowledging the positive changes in the McCready household. The boys appeared healthier and happier, while Sam seemed less burdened by the weight of single parenthood. During the 4th week, Josephine decided the time had come for complete honesty. She spread the hidden documents across the kitchen table after the boys went to bed, watching Sam's expression change from confusion to amazement as she explained their significance. The water rights alone would solve their financial problems immediately. Several neighboring ranchers had struggled through the drought, while the McCready stream flowed steadily across their property. Legal ownership of those water sources meant guaranteed income that would secure the family's future. To interpret complex legal documents demonstrated education that exceeded most lawyers in the territory. Her understanding of property law and mineral rights suggested a past more complicated than simple domestic service. She told him about her former master's daughter, who had been determined to understand every aspect of plantation management. The young woman had shared her extensive education with the bright seamstress, who absorbed knowledge with desperate hunger. Those lessons now proved invaluable, in ways neither teacher nor student could have anticipated. Sam felt overwhelming gratitude mixed with growing respect for this remarkable woman, who had already given his family so much. Her decision to share the document's contents showed trust that humbled him, while opening possibilities for partnership that extended beyond household arrangements. Their conversation continued deep into the night, as they planned how to capitalize on the ranch's true value while protecting the boys' interests. Josephine's strategic thinking impressed Sam with its sophistication, while her concern for the children's welfare touched his heart. The next morning brought new routines as they began implementing changes that would transform their circumstances permanently. Josephine helped Sam draft letters to neighboring ranchers about water rights negotiations, while teaching the boys advanced mathematics using profit calculations as examples. Daniel embraced the excitement of family fortune with 8-year-old enthusiasm, while Ben showed quiet satisfaction at the security it represented. Both boys had lived with the underlying tension of financial uncertainty without fully understanding it. Now they sensed their father's relief and responded with increased confidence. The first water rights negotiation brought immediate results. A desperate rancher offered payment that exceeded Sam's annual income from previous years. Other neighbors quickly followed with their own proposals, recognizing the value of reliable access to the McCready stream. Within days, the family's financial situation had reversed completely. Sam paid outstanding debts while planning improvements to the ranch that would increase its productivity and value. Josephine suggested investments in breeding stock and equipment that would create long-term prosperity beyond the water rights income. But their growing happiness faced an unexpected threat that arrived on a Tuesday morning. The telegram's yellow paper seemed to glow with menace as Sam read the brief message that changed everything instantly. Victoria Ashworth announced connections that could overwhelm any defense he might mount. Her education and refinement would contrast sharply with frontier life in ways that might convince a judge the boys deserved better circumstances. Josephine read the message with growing alarm as she recognized the threat to their fragile happiness. Her presence in the household would be viewed as scandalous by Eastern standards, regardless of her qualifications or the children's obvious attachment. Victoria would undoubtedly use their unconventional arrangement as evidence of moral failure. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as their financial security seemed assured and family bonds had strengthened beyond hope, external forces threatened to destroy everything they had built together. The boys sensed the adults' tension without understanding its source, but their newfound confidence began wavering in response. Sam paced the kitchen while considering options that all seemed inadequate against Victoria's advantages. She would arrive with lawyers and social expectations that would paint their humble ranch life as unsuitable for children who deserved proper society and formal education. But Josephine possessed strategic thinking that military commanders would envy. Her mind worked through possibilities with calculating precision, while her heart ached for the family she had grown to love completely. There was one solution that might protect them all, though it required courage and commitment that would change everything permanently. She proposed marriage, not from romantic impulse but from practical necessity. As Sam's legal wife, she would gain parental rights that Victoria couldn't easily challenge. Their combined resources and documented stability would present a stronger defense than either could mount separately. The proposal hung in the kitchen air like morning mist, while both adults contemplated implications that extended far beyond legal protection. Sam stared at Josephine's proposal, while understanding crystallized in his mind. Marriage would give her legal standing that Victoria couldn't dismiss easily. Their combined resources and documented stability would create a formidable defense against custody challenges from Philadelphia society. But the decision carried implications beyond mere legal strategy. Sam had grown to respect and care for this remarkable woman who had transformed his family's life completely. The boys adored her with genuine affection that couldn't be manufactured or forced. Marriage would formalize bonds that already existed in their hearts. Josephine watched his internal, had begun calling Josephine Mama naturally, treating her as family long before legal documents might make it official. Their innocent acceptance simplified what adults had complicated with social expectations and legal requirements. The wedding took place 2 days later in the ranch's main room, with the circuit preacher officiating. Mrs. Henderson attended with obvious disapproval, while several neighbors showed genuine support for the family's happiness. Daniel served as best man with solemn pride, while Ben scattered wildflower petals with careful concentration. Josephine wore her best dress, with Maria's wedding ring that Sam had offered, with quiet ceremony. The boys had insisted their mother would approve of sharing her ring with the woman who had brought joy back to their home. The simple band symbolized continuity rather than replacement. Their vows focused on commitment to the children and partnership in building a strong family foundation. Romance might develop over time, but their marriage began with mutual respect and shared dedication to the boys' welfare above all other considerations. The ceremony concluded with community celebration that helped establish their union's legitimacy in local society. Even Mrs. Henderson's opposition softened slightly when she observed the boys' obvious happiness and the family's evident stability under Josephine's influence. But their brief honeymoon period ended abruptly when Victoria Ashworth arrived ahead of schedule with an entourage that transformed Sundown Prairie's quiet Main Street. Her private railroad car dominated the small station, while uniformed servants unloaded elegant luggage that spoke of wealth beyond frontier comprehension. Victoria herself embodied Eastern sophistication that made every woman in town feel inadequate by comparison. Her silk traveling dress cost more than most families earned in a year, while her cultured accent carried authority that commanded immediate attention from everyone within hearing. She established temporary residence at the town's modest hotel, while her lawyers examined local records and interviewed community members about the McCready family's circumstances. Her investigation was thorough and professional, conducted with the efficiency that substantial money could purchase. The legal team discovered the ranch's newfound wealth through water rights negotiations, but their research revealed something more disturbing than mere financial success. Victoria's Philadelphia lawyer had been objectives. Evidence mounted through careful investigation of the lawyer's other cases and business relationships. He had convinced several wealthy Eastern families to seek custody of Western relatives, specifically to gain control of valuable properties. The pattern was clear to anyone who understood how to interpret legal documents properly. Josephine's education in property law proved invaluable, as she built a comprehensive case exposing the conspiracy that threatened their family. Her documentation was meticulous and legally sound, prepared with the skill that impressed even Victoria's remaining honest advisors. The confrontation came during a formal hearing at the territorial courthouse, with the entire community in attendance. Victoria arrived confident in her superior resources and social standing, while Sam and Josephine prepared to defend their family with truth and determination. Victoria's presentation emphasized the boys' need for proper education and cultural advantages that only Eastern society could provide. Her arguments were compelling and delivered with practiced skill that swayed several observers who hadn't considered the children's long-term prospects. But Josephine's counter-argument demolished the false foundation of Victoria's case with surgical precision. She presented evidence of the lawyer's real agenda, while demonstrating the ranch's true value and the family's financial security. Her legal knowledge rivaled that of any professional advocate. The revelation that Victoria had been manipulated by her own lawyer created dramatic tension in the packed courtroom. Evidence of the conspiracy to steal the boys' inheritance through fraudulent custody proceedings shocked everyone present, including Victoria herself. Victoria's reaction to learning the truth about her lawyer's deception was immediate and decisive. She dismissed her legal team and apologized to the family for the pain her misguided intervention had caused. Her genuine concern for the boys had been exploited by unscrupulous men who saw only financial opportunity. The judge ruled decisively in favor of the McCready family, while ordering investigation of the Philadelphia lawyer's other questionable activities. Victoria's public acknowledgement of the conspiracy's existence validated the family's defense and exposed the broader pattern of exploitation. But Victoria's transformation from adversary to ally created unexpected opportunities for the boys' future. Her wealth and social connections could provide educational advantages without requiring separation from their loving home, originally her own. The family returned to their ranch united and secure, with legal threats resolved and future prospects brighter than any of them had dared imagine possible when this journey began. 6 months later, the McCready Ranch buzzed with prosperity that would have seemed impossible during those desperate early days in Sundown Prairie. The water rights income had funded improvements that transformed the property into one of the territory's most successful operations. New fencing enclosed expanded grazing areas, while upgraded equipment increased productivity beyond Sam's wildest expectations. The ranch house itself reflected the family's changed circumstances, with fresh paint, repaired structures, and additions that provided comfort without ostentation. Josephine's practical approach to wealth meant investing in functionality rather than mere display, though the home now radiated warmth and security that money couldn't directly purchase. Daniel had grown 3 inches and gained confidence that showed in every aspect of his daily life. His reading skills now surpassed those of many adults in the community, while his mathematical abilities impressed the traveling teachers Victoria had arranged to visit regularly. The boy who had boldly pointed at a stranger and declared her family now took pride in his exceptional mother's reputation throughout the territory. Ben's transformation seemed even more miraculous to those who remembered his selective mutism and fearful withdrawal from the world. The 5-year-old chattered constantly now, sharing thoughts and dreams with anyone willing to listen. His nightmares about abandonment had disappeared completely, replaced by secure sleep in a home where love was abundant and permanent. Victoria's monthly visits had evolved into cherished family celebrations that enriched everyone's lives without disrupting their fundamental bonds. She brought books, educational materials, and stories of the wider world, while respecting the frontier life that had proven so beneficial for her nephews. Her relationship with Josephine had deepened into genuine friendship, based on mutual respect and shared commitment to the boy's welfare. The conspiracy trial had concluded with Victoria's former lawyer facing criminal charges, while several other families recovered properties that had been fraudulently targeted. Josephine's legal expertise had proven instrumental in exposing the broader pattern of exploitation that had victimized numerous Western families with valuable land holdings. Sam's marriage to Josephine's family had become complete, as their contributions to local prosperity became undeniable. Other families had benefited from the water rights negotiations, while the ranch's success had stimulated economic growth throughout the region. Mrs. Henderson still occasionally muttered about impropriety, but her complaints found few sympathetic listeners among neighbors who had witnessed the family's positive influence. Josephine had established herself as an informal legal advisor for other families facing property disputes or contract difficulties. Her education and analytical skills filled a crucial need in a community that rarely saw qualified lawyers. She charged nothing for her services, but accepted gratitude that enhanced her standing among people who had once viewed her with suspicion. The territorial governor had written personally to commend Josephine's role in exposing the property conspiracy, while several Eastern newspapers had covered the story as an example of frontier justice prevailing over sophisticated corruption. Her reputation extended far beyond Sundown Prairie, though she remained focused on family and community rather than broader recognition. On this particular autumn morning, the weekly stagecoach brought another group of mail-order brides to the town square. Josephine watched from the mercantile porch as familiar scenes played out with new participants. Young women clustered nervously, while potential suitors made their evaluations based on surface appearances and limited conversation. But this time, an older woman stood apart from the group, just as Josephine had months earlier. Her worn clothing and resigned expression told a story of diminished expectations and limited options. The townspeople's reactions followed predictable patterns of dismissal and cruel whispers that Josephine remembered all too well. Daniel noticed the similarity immediately and tugged on his mother's sleeve to point out the obvious injustice unfolding in the square. His moral compass had been shaped by watching how people could transform when given genuine opportunities to prove their worth beyond surface appearances. Ben joined his brother in expressing concern for the dismissed woman, while Sam nodded approvingly at his son's compassionate instincts. The boys had learned to see people as their mother did, looking for potential rather than focusing on limitations that others might perceive. Josephine approached the woman with the same dignity she had maintained during her own ordeal in that very square. She offered practical assistance and genuine conversation that revealed another educated individual whose circumstances families seeking younger, more conventional wives. Within hours, Josephine had arranged placement with a widower rancher whose 3 young daughters desperately needed maternal guidance. The match proved beneficial for everyone involved, while demonstrating how easily good solutions could be found when people looked beyond superficial characteristics. The intervention became a pattern, as Josephine took responsibility for helping other dismissed women find appropriate situations where their skills and experience could be valued properly. Her success rate was remarkable because she understood both the women's capabilities and the community's actual needs rather than their stated preferences. Years later, Daniel would tell visitors the story of how their family began with a simple declaration of truth that changed everything for all of them. He would explain how his mother had taught him to see people's real worth rather than their surface appearance, and how that lesson had shaped every important decision in his life. The boy who had pointed at a stranger and seen his future mother had grown into a man who understood that family was created through choice and commitment rather than accident of birth. His story became legend in Sundown Prairie, inspiring other families to look beyond conventional expectations when seeking the love and partnership that truly mattered.